Hi, everyone. Carter Krishnar for Beyond the 90. One of the things that has not been talked about with regards to USL's recent announcements, first of a Division One league and then a promotion and relegation, which of course is contingent on the Division One league taking off, and I think the combination of those two things means it will happen. Is the impact on MLS Next Pro, where we've already seen expansion slow. Now, almost 2 years ago, I wrote a number of pieces about how, based on my reporting, MLS Next Pro was winning the head to head battles against USL in order to secure potential expansion clubs in tier two and tier three markets. And what has happened since is a reversal of that. USL League One is scoring victory after victory after victory. USL League One now seems like a very logical entry point. Now, especially with the pro rel setup, a very logical entry point for clubs. And once they geographically are able to split the country up into four, maybe six regions, all of the travel advantages, the advantages in regionalization of travel that you get from Next Pro will also be in USL League One, with a clear pathway to Division One if you get promoted twice, and with more competitive matches, with more competitive teams, with more competitive games, with a local feel. Um, I'm not. I'm someone, and I've talked about this a lot in the past. I think reserve teams are important. I think having a place for young players to develop um, has always been important. I would like every professional team in the U.S. soccer ecosystem on both the men's and women's side to have reserve teams, to where you can develop players, um, and you have a place for them to nurture. You have a place for them to get games, quite frankly. But what we're finding with Next Pro, and this is my observation from talking to a number of technical directors and people who and even player agents across the country. Actually, across two countries, it's in Canada also. So the United States and Canada, is that what we're finding with Next Pro is that suddenly, without the number of independent teams in the league that maybe we had thought there would be. There is Carolina Core currently. There is Chattanooga FC. Jacksonville Armada will be coming in 2026. Potentially a Connecticut team, Cleveland team, Albany, New York. Looks like it might be off now, and they might be looking at USL. Grand Rapids team, a Western Michigan team, will come in at some point. But and the hybrid situation in Ventura County, Huntsville, and Oakland. But still, these are situations where you have reserve players, young reserve players, playing with other young players. It doesn't, and winning and losing really doesn't matter in that league. So you're not getting the sort of competitive benefits, or what technical directors and people who work on the technical side of the sport, on the sporting side, are telling me. And so now you're seeing this season, even more than last season and far more than the season before, uh, MLS clubs loan what they consider more promising players they're trying to develop directly into the USL Championship or USL League One. So they play with older players. They play against older players. They play in matches that mean something. They play and they feel the pressure of competition, etc., that they're not necessarily getting in Next Pro. That was already impacting investors' decisions about whether to go to USL or go to MLS Next Pro. Although, as we know, financial decisions, investment decisions are often completely separate from sporting decisions. And what the sporting side thinks is preferred is not what the investment or money side thinks is preferred. And there had been a feeling that Next Pro still offered a safety from being in the MLS ecosystem, from being a place where entry fees are much lower. Point of entry is much lower than in any USL professional league, whether it's League One or the Championship, and eventually USL Division One, and where travel is regional. Whereas USL League One still has the problem where Portland Maine will have to travel to AV Alta in Los Angeles County this year. Spokane will have to travel. Well, actually, FC Naples just played this past weekend in Spokane. FC Naples of Florida going all the way to Eastern Washington. So you have these road trips that you don't have in MLS Next Pro. And travel is one of the biggest costs. And one of the reasons why this sport, I think, has had kind of a stop-start trajectory in the United States and in Canada. Travel so much more prohibitive in the United States and Canada than it is in Europe, in any European country. So any Western European country, I should say. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about Ukraine and Russia. So I think that was something MLS Next Pro still had going for it. But as as USL League One gets built out, as it gets linked to the championship and Division One, it can start to take on the regional elements that have made USL League Two at the adult amateur level. That's what we would call that, because USL League Two is in this situation where they're not sanctioned by the U.S. Adult Soccer Association. They're sanctioned directly by U.S. Soccer, but they're also a development league, right? So they're not a professional league. How we characterize them, I'm calling them adult amateur. We could call them development league. Really, they kind of occupy tier 4 alongside UPSL, League for Clubs, and NPSL. Who are all these leagues are sanctioned differently, so I don't want to get into the governance side of it yet. But one thing that's made USL League 2 really successful is as they've hit critical mass in terms of clubs, regionally, you don't have to travel very far. Here in Florida, where I am alone, you have a Florida North and a Florida South division of USL League 2. USL League 1's not going to get to that stage, that level of regionalization, but they could get to, we might have just a league on the Gulf Coast or Mid-Atlantic, right? A division, I should say, within USL League 1 eventually. That will mean MLS Next Pro loses its last real advantage over USL League 1. So I think the train is heading very much in the direction of USL now. These announcements give USL more momentum. Doesn't mean it's game up for Next Pro. MLS's owners ultimately have to decide. And I think there's a difference between ownership and the technical side. I've articulated where the technical side is, I think, on Next Pro, increasingly on Next Pro. That's not the case at every MLS club, but that's the case at many of them, where they are versus where maybe the owners are, where the owners feel like Next Pro is an opportunity to expand their brand, an opportunity to get guys in academies that they've invested a lot of money in. They've invested money in their academies games, so then they can move them out, or they either move them to the first team or they can ship them out. They can sell them. But I think the technical side would say they're probably even more lucrative as a commodity on the market, open market here of American soccer, of global football, if they get competitive games in USL, in a USL league or in some league which is not a reserve league where you're playing with other 18 and 19-year-olds. So this is going to be interesting. Let's watch this space between MLS Next Pro and USL League One, which is an integral part of the soccer wars. And I think this is a pretty big deal in terms of how things are moving forward as we talk about the situation around lower division soccer in the United States.